Elon Musk, the man behind revolutions in technology and space, risked everything to save a child no one knew about. A decision that shocked the entire world. But what was it that truly made Musk leave everything behind? From the SpaceX empire to Tesla. To care for a tiny life? The truth behind this action will leave you stunned. Elon Musk rushed along the sidewalk, his mind overwhelmed with thoughts of work and meetings, unable to escape the relentless pace of the world. Though the night had fallen, the quiet of the city seemed unable to erase the tension within him. He longed for relaxation, to forget the pressures of the long day. But it felt as though an invisible hand had guided him to an important moment he could not avoid. Suddenly, a faint but urgent sound echoed in the still night. Musk stopped, startled, scanning his surroundings. At first, he thought it was the wind or some distant echo. But no. The cry rang out again, clearer this time. Impossible to ignore. He stepped closer, each footstep heavier, wondering why he felt as if something beyond explanation was pulling him in. Finally, he reached a dim corner of the street, where the faint glow of streetlights revealed a strange sight, an old, shabby blanket draped over a trash can. Beneath the blanket lay a child, curled up, her tiny hands and feet trembling in the biting cold of the night. The scene made Musk's heart clench, confusion crossing his face. Who could do this? He wondered, the unexplainable ache swelling within him. He froze, unable to move, his mind filled with unanswered questions. What should he do? Simply call for help and continue with his life? Or take a step into this child's world? A world with no turning back? Each passing second felt endless as he knelt down, his hand trembling as it reached for the cold blanket. But as soon as his hand touched it, the crying began to subside, as if the child sensed the presence of someone ready to protect her. In that silent moment, a powerful yet painful feeling rose within Musk. The sensation of a man facing a reality he could not ignore, could not turn away from. This child was as light as a breeze, small and utterly helpless. In an instant, all of his achievements, all the success he had worked for, seemed meaningless. He could not walk away, could not ignore the presence of this fragile life that needed him. He held the child in his arms, her body warming under his embrace. But that warmth could not erase the fear that surrounded them both. Musk looked up at the flickering streetlights, searching for an explanation for the scene. But all that remained was the emptiness of the dark night. If I hadn't walked by here, would she still be here? A haunting question consumed his thoughts. And in that moment, Musk understood that he had changed, that his life had taken a different turn. No longer about strategic decisions or colossal goals, but about a life that needed him right now. From that moment, his entire world entered a new chapter, one he could not turn back from. Under the dim streetlights of the quiet street, Elon Musk held the child tightly in his arms. Her skin was as cold as ice, her eyes tightly shut, but not opening, as if she was too exhausted to wake up. His heart thudded in his chest, but he couldn't shake the unspoken feeling rising in his chest. A voice within him echoed, gentle yet full of urgency. Don't just stand there. Do something. He felt the weight of this decision, unlike any burden he had ever known. He was the man who had conquered space, who had built billion-dollar companies. But now, he was just a man with a tiny life in his hands. It seemed like everything had been turned upside down. The achievements he had once been proud of now felt insignificant and distant. Hold her tight, he murmured, clutching the child to his chest. His hands now felt like the hands of an ordinary man, no longer the creator of self-driving cars or rockets heading into space. It was just him and the little girl, together in this moment. Despite the work, the plans, the meetings that were scheduled, he knew what he had to do. He had to save this little girl. An easy decision. as if everything had been written out long before, and he could not step back. Musk took out his phone and quickly called his security team. His voice was low and steady, though his heart was full of worry. "Prepare the car. We need to leave immediately." There was no time to think further. He knew that every second mattered for the little girl. He couldn't let her endure any longer. Within minutes, the SUV appeared. The headlights illuminated the dark night, lighting up the path ahead, like a sign of salvation. He got into the car, the child still silent in his arms, her eyes still closed. But nothing could ease his worry. The car silently sped through the empty streets. In the cold air of the night, Musk stared out the window, but not to enjoy the view, but to search for an answer to the unexplainable question: why was he here? In this situation? When they arrived home, Musk didn't think much. He simply placed the child into the makeshift crib he hastily prepared. The vast space in his mansion suddenly felt cramped, almost suffocating him with a sense of unease. His accomplishments now couldn't help him solve anything. He realized that all those things seemed trivial when faced with a fragile life, unable to protect itself. And in that moment, he understood one thing: this child needed him, and he needed to do the right thing. Musk looked at the sleeping child, his hand trembling as he touched her soft skin. He didn't know what to do next, but he knew one thing for sure: everything was about to change from here. In the days that followed, Musk could feel the change in every breath he took. His life no longer revolved around the stressful hours in the boardroom or calls from executives. The long nights, once spent on work, were now filled with the cries of a child unable to sleep peacefully. He was no longer the sole operator of a tech empire. When it came time to make a decision, he gave up the peaceful life he once knew, only to face new challenges: becoming a father. Important meetings were postponed. Media events gradually disappeared from the schedule. The assistants still rushed around following the old rhythm. But for Musk, everything had changed. He knew that now was not the time to continue discussions about products or markets, but about a tiny life he had just met. And when those around him asked about his absence, Musk could only respond with vague answers, as if he had become a different person. Everyone in the company couldn't understand this change. Those who were used to seeing Musk always busy, always at the head of every race, now only saw him absent, distracted, seemingly no longer caring about what was happening in the world of technology. But the truth was, he was burying himself in a completely new journey, one he never thought he would have to face. He sat in the small bedroom, quietly looking at the child in the crib. Her tiny hands clutched his. These were the only peaceful moments he had. And even though everything outside continued to spin, he felt himself being pulled away from it all. No more late work nights. No more tense meetings. It was just him and the little girl, with simple needs that he had to meet. He had once been someone who didn't know how to compromise, always finding ways to overcome every challenge. But now, the busyness of a simple life made him feel like he was lost. Thoughts about the future were no longer clear. Could he maintain everything he had built? Could the company continue to operate without his direct involvement? These questions had no answers. But in his heart, one decision had been made: this little girl, a child he had never prepared for, was now his number one priority. As the night grew quiet, his phone buzzed incessantly. Notifications, messages, and calls continued as usual. But Musk didn't want to be bothered by them. These sacrifices were necessary. His friends called him crazy, but Musk didn't see anything wrong. He didn't need reasons or understanding from outsiders, simply because, for him, this was the right thing to do. With each passing day, the bond between him and the little girl grew stronger. Even though the world outside continued to turn, he couldn't go back to how things were before. He felt profound changes within himself. But at the same time, one thing that he couldn't avoid loomed ahead: not only challenges in his work, but also a danger he had never imagined would come. Soon, the media noticed the unusual change in Elon Musk's actions. Journalists kept asking questions about his sudden withdrawal from the public eye, making the speculation even hotter. People began to come up with hypotheses about the reasons behind his absence. Could health problems be threatening him? Or had he fallen into some sort of mental crisis? But what no one expected was a leaked photo, a quiet moment between Musk and a child. This photo immediately attracted the attention of tabloid websites. Elon Musk's secret daughter. The newspapers kept posting shocking headlines. Yet, the question remained unanswered: who was this child? The online community began to stir with speculation. Some believed that this child could be Musk's biological daughter, while others thought he might have adopted her. However, no one could be certain about the truth behind the photo. Although the picture painted an unclear truth, Musk decided to remain silent. He understood that revealing everything would never be the same again. The world wasn't ready to face this story. Even though he had brought the child back from a place filled with ice and coldness, the little girl was not a family member, but a life he had accidentally saved amidst a terrifying cold storm. Yet, he couldn't let anyone know her origins because it was a danger beyond comprehension. Although Musk's advisors continuously urged him to make a public statement to ease the curiosity and concern of the public, he refused. He didn't want everything to become a game of fame or charity. His only goal was to protect the safety of this child. However, as time passed, the feeling of unease within him grew. He began to feel that something strange was silently watching every step he took. This feeling began quietly, with mysterious calls in the late hours when the little girl was asleep. At first, Musk thought it was harmless pranks, but after repeated unanswered calls from the other side, he couldn't help but worry. Everything seemed to be changing. Something was lurking, unseen, yet making him feel it clearly. Then one night, when Musk was sitting absent-mindedly in his office, going through the documents about the child, he couldn't find any clue. There was no information about her family, no record of her being missing. It was as if this child had never existed. Despite all the resources and connections at his disposal, Musk couldn't unravel this puzzle. And then, the letter appeared. An envelope with no sender's name. Simple and cold. When Musk opened it, he found a piece of paper with scribbled words. "You are holding something that isn't yours. The girl will return to us." A chill ran down his spine. Who were these people? How could they know about the little girl? Musk immediately ordered tighter security around his house. He hired more guards, installed additional cameras. But the feeling of being watched didn't go away. He understood that this was no ordinary threat. These people wanted the girl, and they wouldn't stop until they got her. Musk knew he was standing in the middle of a battle no one could see, and everything he had built could crumble in an instant. But he couldn't let this child become a pawn in a game he couldn't control. He decided to do whatever it took to protect her, no matter the cost. In the following days, the child began to change. She became more energetic, cheerful, her eyes sparkling with the innocent light of childhood. Unaware that the world around her was threatening, she ran around the yard, holding Musk's hand and giggling. But at the same time, Musk felt the tension rising. An indescribable darkness seemed to cover the space, as if he were standing on the edge of an inevitable event. The feeling that time was running out could not be shaken from his mind. One evening, while checking the security videos from cameras around the mansion, Musk's eyes caught sight of a figure. A man, dressed in a black coat, was lurking outside the gate, his eyes fixed on every movement in the garden. The man stood there for so long that Musk began to suspect, was he a hunter? Immediately, Musk called the security team. But by the time they arrived, the figure had vanished into the night, leaving only faint footprints in the freshly fallen snow. A clear sign, they were getting closer. The child was not just abandoned, but a target, and no one would stop until they got her. For the first time, when watching those security videos, Musk felt a weight heavier than ever before. It was no longer just the child's past, but her future. He couldn't hesitate. Couldn't let her be dragged into this deadly game. He had to protect her, no matter the cost. How far will we go? Musk wondered to himself, standing in the room, the dim light from the computer screen casting shadows on his face. If they come again, it won't just be to send another message, it'll be to take action. He could feel the tension, the suffocating atmosphere that almost choked him. These people no longer just wanted to threaten, they wanted to seize. And no one could stop them. Sure that time was running out. Musk received a message from the head of the security team at midnight. Unusual movement detected in the north. Panic quickly surged. But Musk didn't show it. He focused, analyzing every move, every decision. The security team had fortified the outer perimeter. But clearly, that wasn't enough. These people had found the weakness, and their target had not changed. Upon receiving the message, Musk acted immediately. He quickly moved to the child's room, where she was still sleeping soundly in her crib. Each step he took was light, as if he didn't want to wake her. While the child peacefully drifted in her sleep, Musk felt his heart heavy. Everything had changed since she came into his life. Now, she was not just a light in his world but the reason he was willing to fight to the end. You have to be safe, Musk whispered, holding the child close. He carefully lifted her up, his heart breaking as he looked at her innocent face. Unaware of the danger looming, Musk headed toward the safe room in his office, which had been designed long ago for situations like this. He never thought he would have to use it. But tonight, everything had changed. As the security team took their positions, their footsteps echoed in the hallway. But nothing could stop the tension filling the mansion. Musk clearly sensed the unavoidable battle ahead, and he was ready to face whatever came. Every passing second felt like waiting for an impending storm. When they reached the safe room, Musk gently placed the child inside, touching the secret wall where he felt the safest. We'll be fine, he reassured himself, though his heart raced with anxiety. But Musk knew that once the confrontation began, nothing would ever be the same again. They would come, and this time, he wouldn't let them take her so easily. The metal door slowly slid open, revealing a simple space, fully equipped to protect them for a short time. Still, Musk knew this wouldn't be a permanent safe haven. The threat outside was still waiting, and they couldn't hide forever. As they entered, a loud explosion echoed through the mansion, making his heart pound. He placed the child in the crib inside the safe room, his hands trembling with stress, his mind spinning with a million thoughts. He couldn't keep running, he could hide once. But if it continued, they would find a way to break through this protection. He slammed the safe room door shut, creating a final barrier for the little girl, then turned back to face the cold hallway of the house. This was his home, the fortress he had built over the years. And today, it would not easily fall. Every sound in the darkness felt like a warning. They were getting closer, and he knew there could be no retreat. A sense of tension overtook him. He reached for the drawer of his desk, pulling out the gun he had never imagined he would have to use. But now it was the last resort. Taking a deep breath, he focused all his attention on every step. He moved silently through the house, his concentration at its peak. Not a sound to be heard. It had been a long time since he faced a situation as dangerous as this. But with all his years leading companies and handling crises, he knew this was a fight for survival. As he reached the end of the hallway, he noticed two men in black approaching him, moving quickly and with purpose. These weren't amateurs. Musk could sense the professionalism in every step they took. What was their objective? Had they come for the little girl? Or was there another reason he couldn't yet figure out? Musk had no time for further thought. He stepped out of the shadows, the gun raised, his eyes locking onto the two men. "Stop right there!" His voice rang out firm, with no hint of hesitation. The two strangers froze for a moment, but quickly responded with action, their hands reaching for their weapons. A lightning-fast confrontation, lasting only seconds but feeling like it stretched on forever. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, each moment filled with unbearable tension. The first man lunged towards him, but Musk was quicker, his fingers squeezing the trigger instantly. A sharp gunshot rang out, and the man collapsed, unable to resist. The second man didn't have time to react, standing frozen, eyes wide. But the hesitation was enough for Musk to act. Not just a technological genius. He was also a fighter when necessary. And tonight, he would protect what was his. The second man turned and disappeared into the darkness, hurrying as they had come. But Musk knew the battle was far from over. They wouldn't give up. And next time, they wouldn't be so easily defeated. Musk sat in the quiet room, his hands resting on the table, his mind tangled in a web of information and conflicting emotions. He had tried so hard to protect the little girl, but now everything had spiraled beyond his control. The child, with her innocent gaze and sweet smile, was no longer just a random piece in his life. She had become entangled in a dangerous web he had never anticipated. When he discovered the terrifying truth, a chill ran down his spine. The girl wasn't just an innocent child. She was part of a deadly game, one that a criminal organization had discarded when they no longer found her useful. But now, they wanted her back. Not out of affection or pity, but because she carried a secret within her. Something that could turn the world upside down. A key that could unlock a dark mystery they were willing to do anything to obtain. Musk knew that, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't keep the little girl forever. He couldn't always stand between her and danger. Couldn't live in a constant state of threatening phone calls or unseen shadows surrounding them. She couldn't continue to live in this world, where she was hunted for things she didn't even understand. He had to take her away. Take her to a far-off place where no one could reach her. He silently made his plans. Every decision was calculated carefully. Every step was a torturous action. Finally, when everything was ready, he looked at the little girl one last time. Her eyes, clear and innocent, seemed to ask him why she had to leave everything behind. He could only offer a weak smile, trying to hide the swelling pain in his chest. She didn't understand, and perhaps she would never understand what was happening. But he knew this was the best he could do for her. As the car sped into the night, Musk stood at the entrance, his eyes following the fading silhouette of the car. A feeling of emptiness, coldness, as if a part of himself had been lost, filled his heart. He had given up so much to save the little girl, and now, all he could do was trust that she would live her life. No longer threatened. No longer a pawn in a game she hadn't chosen to play. In that moment, Musk felt clearly that he had given everything, and a part of his soul, just like that car, had vanished into the darkness. Musk stood still in the emptiness of the house, where the darkness and fragments of memories were his only companions. He didn't know how long he had waited before deciding on his next plan. Everything became blurred in his mind. A chain of mistakes and pain. The little girl had been taken, but the price of that protection had been too high. He looked around the house, where no trace of the peaceful days that once were remained. Everything had changed. Not because he wanted it, but because life had thrust him into a battle he was never prepared for. A battle that threatened not only the little girl's life but his own as well. He walked through the hallways, where the unfamiliar shadows of enemies still lurked, waiting for an opportunity. But Musk's heart no longer beat fast from fear. He had learned that when someone chooses to sacrifice everything for another, Nothing can make them falter. That sacrifice, though painful, was also the light that would guide his next decisions. But deep down, Musk understood that protecting someone doesn't always change the world. He couldn't simply change the fate of a child, or a nation, or this vast world, just with his own decisions. But he could decide for himself, for the people he loved, and for the values he believed in. The next day, as dawn broke, Musk stood before the window, looking outside, no longer facing the threatening shadows. The world continued to turn, and though everything had changed, the one thing that hadn't changed was that he would still fight for what he believed was right, no matter how difficult the road ahead. Even though the little girl was no longer by his side, he knew that life was a constant series of challenges, and each challenge would be an opportunity for him to rise stronger. Musk was not a winner in every battle, but he was someone who never gave up. In this life, sacrifice is not always immediately rewarded, and sometimes you must face loneliness and loss. But the important thing is, even if you lose everything, you can still find the strength within yourself to keep moving forward, to rebuild, to protect what matters. And that is the true victory in this life. Disclaimer: this is a fictional story created for entertainment purposes and to convey meaningful life messages. Any events, characters, or situations in the story are products of imagination. The author is not responsible for any real-life connections or events.